The young white woman, delivered in silence as a bargaining chip, expected contempt. But the Apache invited her to the table, and there began something no one predicted. What she revealed later saved lives. Subscribe to the channel and discover how someone who was humiliated became a symbol of honor and healing. The wagon moved slowly along the dirt road, each jolt seeming like a silent sentence. Inside, Iracema Albuquerque held a small bundle with just enough for never coming back. Her robust body swayed with the movement, while her eyes fixed on her own hands, refusing to face the two men escorting her without uttering a single word. The 23-year-old woman knew exactly what this journey meant. It was the end. It was exile. It was the solution her parents, owners of the largest cocoa plantation in the Bahian Reconcavo, had found to get rid of the daughter they considered a burden. Too fat, too strange, too difficult to marry, her mother would say when she thought Iracema couldn't hear. On that morning in 1897, the wagon crossed the damp lands separating the big house from the Quilombo community of Refugio, a territory disputed for generations. The recent conflict over the fertile lands near the river had escalated, with threats from both sides. The solution emerged during a meeting between her father, Colonel Augusto Albuquerque, and the Council of Elders of the community. Iracema would be offered as a gift of union, a forced alliance to seal peace. "Better than losing our lands to those blacks," her father had said the night before, not caring that she was present. "At least she'll have some use." The wagon stopped at the edge of the clearing where the community began. Simple mud houses formed a semicircle around a central yard, where some children interrupted their games to observe the arrival of the white woman. One of the men got down and signaled for Iracema to follow. Her legs trembled when she finally stepped onto the red earth. Before her, 3 elders waited, flanked by a tall, dark-skinned man with a penetrating gaze. He wore simple clothes, but his bearing and erect posture revealed respect. "This is Colonel Albuquerque's daughter," one of the escorts announced dryly, "brought as per the agreement." Without further words, the men got back on the wagon and departed, leaving Iracema alone before the small group. She expected laughter, malicious comments, looks of contempt like those she received at home, but there was only silence. The tall man approached. "My name is Joaquim," he said in a deep, controlled voice. "The council has designated me to receive you." There wasn't excessive cordiality in his voice, just contained respect. He pointed to one of the smaller houses near the edge of the clearing. "That will be your place." Iracema followed him without a word, feeling the curious gazes of the residents. The house was simple, a single room with a woven straw mat on the floor, a wooden bench, and some basic utensils. A rustic fabric curtain separated a small space that would be her bedroom. "Tomorrow, Donna Jurema will come to see you," Joaquim said from the door. "She will tell you how things work here." Iracema nodded without raising her gaze. When he left, she collapsed onto the mat, allowing tears to finally come. She cried for the abandonment, for the humiliation, for the fear of the unknown. She cried until she fell asleep, exhausted. Dawn arrived with sounds strange to her ears, accustomed to the forced silence of the big house. Cheerful voices of children, songs of women working, the constant rhythm of pestles pounding. A soft knock on the door made her get up hastily, smoothing her wrinkled dress. It was an elderly lady with white hair and a serene smile. "I am Jurema," she said simply. "Come with me." The older woman led her through the yard, briefly explaining the organization of the community. She showed where the communal kitchen was, the meeting place, the workspaces. People observed Iracema with curiosity, but no one made comments about her body or appearance. "Everyone works here," explained Jurema, "each according to their abilities. What do you know how to do, girl?" Iracema hesitated. At home, she had always been kept hidden, performing only solitary tasks. "I know a little about plants," she answered in a low voice. "My grandmother taught me about herbs and remedies before she passed away." Jurema's face lit up. "Then we'll start there." The elder took her to a small building set apart, where the aroma of dried herbs permeated the air. Inside, a middle-aged woman was organizing leaves into small bundles. "This is Donna Antonia, our healer," introduced Jurema. "Antonia, this is Iracema. She knows plants." The woman examined Iracema with shrewd eyes, noting her soft hands and withdrawn posture. Instead of comments, she handed her a small basket. I need fresh lemon balm leaves. Can you recognize it? Irasima nodded. Buy the lemon scent in the leaves and the square stem. A slight smile appeared on Antonia's face. Go to the garden in the back. Bring only the perfect leaves. Thus began Irachima's days in Quilombo do Refugio. Each morning, after a simple meal in the communal kitchen, she would go to Donna Antonia's healing house. At first, she performed basic tasks, gathering herbs, separating seeds, cleaning utensils. Gradually, she began to demonstrate knowledge beyond what was expected. She recognized properties of plants that even Antonia didn't know, suggesting different combinations for traditional remedies. "Where did you learn this, girl?" asked Antonia one afternoon, after Irasima had prepared an infusion that quickly calmed a child's persistent cough. "In the books from my grandfather's library," she replied, gaining confidence. "And by experimenting alone. No one paid attention to what I did, so I could test different mixtures." A week after her arrival, Irasima noticed Joachim observing her from the entrance of the healing house. He didn't speak, just nodded in acknowledgement and left. The next morning, she found a small package at her door. Inside was seeds she had mentioned looking for a specific remedy. There was no note, but she knew who the gift was from. It was the first of many. Joachim never spoke much, but began to appear regularly, bringing plants he found in the forest, tools that made her work easier, interesting stones that could be used to grind herbs. Each gift was delivered in silence, each thank you received with a simple nod. Time passed, and Irasima noticed the transformations in herself. Her hands, once soft, now showed calluses from honest work. Her fair skin had gained a slight tan from the daily sun. Her posture, once bent by shame, now rose with growing confidence. And for the first time in her life, her robust body didn't seem to matter to anyone. It was just the body that carried her abilities, nothing more. It was on a stormy afternoon that Irasima met Tiago. The rain was falling heavily, transforming the yard into mud, when Donna Antonia hurriedly entered the healing house, carrying a soaked boy. "They found him by the river," she explained, placing the child on the mat. "He's burning with fever." The boy couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Skinny, with his body covered in reddish spots and eyes glazed with delirium. Irasima approached, gently touching the child's forehead. "How long has he been like this?" "No one knows," answered Antonia. "He must have come from some nearby plantation, perhaps escaped or abandoned." Irasima examined the spots on the boy's body, his accelerated pulse, his difficult breathing. "It looks like measles, but there's something more," she murmured. "We need to lower this fever immediately." While Antonia prepared cold water compresses, Irasima mixed herbs in an infusion. She added leaves they rarely used, carefully dosing. "Are you sure about this?" asked Antonia, observing the unusual mixture. "Trust me," asked Irasima. "I've seen cases like this before." For 3 days and 3 nights, the two women took turns caring for the boy. Irasima barely slept, monitoring every change, adjusting the remedies as the symptoms evolved. On the morning of the 4th day, when the fever finally subsided, the little one opened his eyes and focused on the face of the woman who had saved him. "Who are you?" he asked in a weak voice. "My name is Irasima," she replied, with a gentle smile she had never shown before. "And yours?" "Tiago," murmured the boy, before falling into a peaceful sleep. The news of how Irasima had saved the boy spread quickly through the community. People began to look at her differently, not as the white woman sent by the landowner, but as someone who brought her own value. Tiago had no known family. As he recovered, he remained by Irachima's side, following her like a small shadow. "He's attached to you," commented Joachim in a rare moment of conversation. They were in the medicinal garden that Irasima had begun to expand behind the healing house. Children recognize who truly sees them. Irasima looked at the boy who played happily among the plants. "I never thought anyone could see me like that." Joachim observed her for a moment. "Here we see people by what they do, not by appearance." He hesitated, then continued. "Your father will come tomorrow. There have been problems at the land border." Irashima's heart accelerated. "What kind of problems?" "Armed men, threats. The custom of landowners when they want more than they already have." The tension was palpable the next day. Colonel Augusto Albuquerque arrived mounted on his imposing horse, accompanied by armed henchmen. The community gathered in the yard, with the council of elders at the front. Iracema remained at a distance, with Tiago clutching her skirt. "The lands up to the river have belonged to my family for generations," declared the colonel with arrogance. "The agreement we made was for you to stay only in this clearing." One of the elders stepped forward. "The agreement included access to the river and the nearby planting lands. It's documented." The colonel smiled with disdain. "Documents can be lost or remade." His gaze swept the crowd until he found Iracema. Something like surprise passed over his face at seeing his transformed daughter, stronger, more confident. "I give you 30 days to retreat your boundaries. After that, I'm not responsible for the consequences." When the group of landowners left, the community entered heated debate. Some advocated resistance, others feared violence. Joaquim remained silent, observing. At night, he appeared at the door of Iracema's house. "May I come in?" he asked formally. She nodded, surprised by the unusual visit. "Your father didn't recognize the change in you," he commented, sitting on the wooden bench. "He looked through you, not at you." Iracema shrugged. "It's always been that way." "Why?" The direct question caught her off guard. No one had ever questioned the reasons for her family's contempt. "I'm not how I should be," she finally answered. "I'm not beautiful nor delicate. I'm not fit to be displayed in parlors or married to some landowner's son. She hesitated. "I'm inadequate." Joaquim leaned forward. "Who decides what's adequate? Here you saved Tiago when no one else could. Your hands heal. Your knowledge is worth more than any appearance." The silence that followed was charged with something new, a mutual recognition that went beyond words. When he finally rose to leave, Joaquim stopped at the door. "Tomorrow, I'll go to the village to register our version of the agreement. I'll return in 3 days." While Joaquim was away, Iracema dedicated herself even more to working with Donna Antonia. The older healer now treated her as an official apprentice, teaching her secrets guarded for generations. "You have the gift," affirmed Antonia one afternoon. "It's not just knowledge, it's intuition, it's connection." Tiago remained inseparable from Iracema. At night, when she put him to bed on the small mat beside hers, the boy always asked for the same thing. "Tell me a story from when you were little." And Iracema would tell. Not the real stories of loneliness and rejection, but reimagined versions where a girl found magic in plants, where difference was strength, not weakness. On the third day, when Joaquim should have returned, a violent storm broke over the region. Rivers overflowed, paths became impassable. Worry grew as the hours passed without news. It was Tiago who saw first, pointing to the edge of the forest. "There! There!" Joaquim was staggering along the muddy trail, supporting himself on an improvised branch crutch. His face was pale, one leg dragging uselessly. Several men ran to help him. They carried him to the healing house where Iracema and Antonia were waiting. "Ambush," he murmured before losing consciousness. The colonel's men. The wound in his leg was serious. A bullet had gone through his thigh, leaving a trail of torn flesh and exposed bone. High fever soon set in, bringing delirium. "We need to clean it completely," determined Iracema, tearing the pants for better access to the wound. "Boiling water, my silver needles, the herbal paste from the blue pot." Donna Antonia observed the young woman take command with steady hands. She was no longer the insecure girl who had arrived months earlier. She was a healer in full power. For hours, Iracema worked on the wound, removing fabric fragments, cleaning, applying herbal mixtures, stitching. At her side, Tiago silently assisted, passing her the materials she requested. When she finished, Joaquim was still unconscious, but his breathing was more regular. "Now we wait," she said, exhausted. "The next 2 days will be decisive." News of the attack spread like wildfire. The tension in the community increased. Some wanted to retaliate immediately, attack the plantation, show strength. The elders called for caution, time to think of strategies. Meanwhile, in the healing house, Iracema fought for Joaquim's life. The fever rose and fell. The wound alternated between improvement and worsening. She barely slept, applying compresses, forcing him to drink infusions even in his semi-conscious state. On the morning of the third day, Iracema fell asleep sitting beside the mat where Joaquim rested. It was the touch of a hand on her face that awakened her. She opened her eyes to find his finally lucid. "You stayed," he murmured. Of course I stayed, she replied, holding his hand between hers. I'm not going anywhere. While Joaquim slowly recovered, the external situation worsened. Armed men were seen prowling the community's boundaries. The deadline given by the colonel was approaching the end. Only 15 days remained. It was at a council meeting that Iracema finally spoke. She had never before actively participated in community decisions, always keeping herself on the sidelines.
Al suo fianco
Tiago assisteva silenziosamente, passandole I materiali che chiedeva. Quando finì, Joaquim era ancora incosciente, ma il respiro era più regolare. Ora è aspettare, disse lei, without bloodshed. I prossimi 2 giorni saranno decisivi. La notizia dell'attacco si diffuse come fuoco. La tensione nella comunità aumentò. My father fears 2 things above all, she explained to the council. Public scandal and loss of political influence. We need to use this against him. In the days that followed, discreet messengers were sent to neighboring communities, to sympathetic merchants, to smaller landowners who also suffered from Colonel Albuquerque's greed. Meanwhile, Joaquim continued his recovery, now walking with the help of an improvised cane. His presence beside Iracema had become constant, as if something invisible kept them connected even when they didn't exchange words. Tiago observed this closeness with the attentive eyes of a child, asking questions that made both uncomfortable. "Why do you look at each other like that?" he asked one afternoon while they gathered herbs in the garden. "Like what?" questioned Iracema, pretending not to understand. "Like you're saying things without speaking," replied the boy, with the simplicity of innocence. Joaquim smiled for the first time in days. "Sometimes eyes speak better than the mouth, little one." The countdown advanced relentlessly, 10 days until the ultimatum. The tension grew, but so did the determination. Iracema now worked on 2 fronts, preparing medicines and ointments for possible wounds if confrontation was inevitable, and articulating alliances for her plan to work. One night, while Tiago slept, Joaquim and Iracema sat at the door of the small house, contemplating the starry sky. "I never thought I would find such courage in someone raised in the big house," he commented, breaking a long silence. "Perhaps I never had a choice but to find it," she replied. "When you live as a ghost in your own home, you learn to build strength from within." He took her hand in his in a gesture worth more than elaborate declarations. "If we survive this, he began, but was interrupted by shouts coming from the yard. They ran outside, Joaquim limping beside Iracema. One of the young watchmen arrived breathless. "Fire!" They set fire to the cassava plantation. It was a warning, a cruel reminder of the colonel's power. The flames quickly consumed the plantation that would provide food for months. While men and women formed a chain to prevent the fire from spreading to the houses, Iracema observed, feeling the familiar fear transform into icy determination. 8 days until the ultimatum. The news that arrived at dawn kindled a spark of hope. The district judge, Dr. Antonor Queiroz, would visit the region in the coming days. He was known for his unusual rectitude and independence from local colonels. "It's our chance," declared Iracema to the council. "We need to get an audience with him before my father reaches him." It was during this debate that the first child fell ill, little Nayara, only 4 years old, daughter of one of the washerwomen. It began with high fever and reddish spots all over her body, similar to those Tiago had when he arrived. Before dusk, 3 more children showed the same symptoms. By nightfall, the number reached 12. "It's an epidemic," confirmed Donna Antonia, her aged face further aged by concern. "We need to isolate the sick immediately." One of the larger huts was emptied to serve as an infirmary. The children's mats were arranged in rows, each with a basin of clean water and cloths beside it. Iracema took command without hesitation. "We'll need more herb of bug, passion fruit leaves, guinea root. How much quinine do we have?" While they organized resources, more children arrived with fever. News of the disease spread like fire, bringing additional fear to the community already tense from the imminent conflict. "It's a sign," murmured one of the older women. "The spirits are displeased." Iracema ignored the superstitious comments, focusing on what she could control. 6 days until the ultimatum. The children's condition worsened. The fever resisted traditional remedies. Red spots turned into small, painful blisters. The little ones moaned, became delirious, refused food. Tiago remained healthy, but his eyes reflected fear at seeing his friends suffering. "Will they get better?" he asked Irasima, while helping her carry fresh water for the compresses. "We'll do everything to make that happen," she replied, avoiding promises she wasn't sure she could keep. On the third night of the epidemic, Irasima woke up startled. An idea was forming in her mind, brought from old readings in her grandfather's library. She ran to the healing house, lit lamps, and began to rummage through notebooks she had brought with her. She finally found the passage she was looking for, an account of a similar epidemic in a distant village, treated with a specific combination of local plants and practices that city doctors would consider absurd. "But this is madness," murmured Donna Antonia when Irasima explained the proposed treatment. "We never mix these herbs and apply heat when they already have fever." "Trust me," asked Irasima. "The specific heat on the plants releases properties we normally don't access. I've seen this work in reliable accounts." The older healer hesitated, but desperation spoke louder. "Let's try with one child first, the strongest of them." They chose a 7-year-old boy, son of one of the hunters. Irasima prepared the unusual mixture, heating it precisely as described in the old text. She applied the hot compresses to the indicated points: temples, wrists, soles of the feet. The strong smell of the herbs permeated the infirmary. For hours, they took turns in the application, monitoring every reaction. At dawn, the boy's fever had significantly decreased. The spots seemed less inflamed. "It worked," whispered Antonia, incredulous. "It really worked." Quickly, they prepared more of the remedy to treat the other children. Irasima worked tirelessly, explaining the process to mothers who wanted to help. 4 days until the ultimatum. While the battle against the disease absorbed the community's energy, the external threat continued advancing. Joachim received news that the colonel was gathering more armed men. "He will take advantage of our weakness with the epidemic," he concluded, worried. "We need a new plan." It was then that news arrived. Judge Antenor Queiroz was staying in the village, just a 2-hour walk away. "I'll go meet him," decided Joachim, despite his leg not being completely healed. "I'll explain our situation." "No," interrupted Irasima, rising from the mat where she was attending a child. "I'll go. My father doesn't expect this. I'll be heard precisely because of who I am." The council hesitated. Sending Irasima meant leaving the children without their main caregiver, but it also represented the best chance to impress the judge. "I'll go at dawn," she declared, ending the debate, "and I'll take Tiago with me." The decision surprised everyone. "Why the boy?" questioned one of the elders. "Because he is living proof of what we do here," replied Irasima. "An abandoned child, saved and welcomed, and because he saw what happened to Joachim, he can testify." That night, while preparing a bundle with documents and some essential herbs, Irasima received a visit from Joachim. He entered silently, bringing a small package. "To protect you on the journey," he said, handing her a talisman made of braided leather with a small green stone in the center. "It was my mother's." The gesture said more than words. Irasima took the talisman and, in an impulse that surprised them both, hugged him tightly. "I'll return," she promised. "With or without the judge's help, I'll find a way." The embrace transformed into something more, a suspended moment where years of solitude dissolved in the mutual recognition of two souls who had found shelter in each other. When their lips finally touched, it was as if something predestined had finally been fulfilled. 3 days until the ultimatum. Irasima and Tiago left at the first glimmer of morning. The boy, understanding the importance of the mission, remained serious and attentive. They walked quickly, avoiding main roads where they could be seen. The village was beyond the river, in a region Irasima had never visited, despite having grown up so close. When they spotted the first rooftops, the sun was already high. "Do you remember what we agreed?" she asked, adjusting the simple clothes she wore. "I speak only when the gentleman asks," recited Tiago. "And I tell exactly what I saw without exaggeration or omission." Finding the inn where the judge was staying was easy in such a small village. Convincing the assistant to grant them an audience was more challenging. Only when Irasima revealed her full name, Irasima Albuquerque de Mendonça, did the doors open. Judge Antenor Queiroz was a middle-aged man, with penetrating eyes that seemed to see beyond appearances. He received them in his improvised office, observing with curiosity the robust young woman with calloused hands and the skinny boy who firmly held her hand. "The daughter of Colonel Albuquerque," he commented after the formal introductions, "living in a Quilombo community." I confess I'm intrigued. I have much to tell you, Your Honor, replied Irasima, maintaining the composure her privileged education had taught her, and little time to do so. As she narrated the events, from her forced delivery to the community to the recent threats and the ambush against Joaquim, the judge's face became more serious. When Tiago gave his testimony about the attack, with the crystalline sincerity of children, the man of law shook his head in disapproval. These land disputes are a cancer in our region, he commented, but without concrete evidence, there's little I can do officially. Irasima felt despair growing but kept her voice firm. We have the original documents of the agreement, and we have witnesses to the attacks. We only ask that you come see for yourself before it's too late. The judge reflected at length. Your presence here is already extraordinary, miss. Risking yourself like this, defending people who should be strangers to someone of your position, Irasima lifted her chin. They are not strangers, sir. They are my people now, my true family. Something in her conviction seemed to impress him. I will leave for there tomorrow, he finally decided. I will see with my own eyes. A spark of hope lit in Irasima's heart. Thank you, Your Honor. But there is another urgent problem. An epidemic is affecting our children. I need to return immediately to care for them. The judge nodded, understanding. Go. I will find the way. As Irasima and Tiago prepared to leave, a movement in the street caught her attention. Familiar men, her father's henchmen, were entering the village. We need another path, she whispered to the boy. They can't see us. 2 days until the ultimatum. The return was longer, through secondary trails that Tiago knew from his wanderings with the other boys. When they finally sighted the community, the sun was already setting. The first thing they noticed was the smoke, not the usual smoke from cooking fires, but a dense, dark column coming from the direction of the plantations. They hastened their pace, hearts tight with a terrible premonition. As they reached the edge of the clearing, Irasima stopped, incredulous. Part of the houses had been burned. People moved frantically, carrying buckets, trying to save what remained. Tiago let go of her hand and ran toward the confusion. Joaquim! Shouted Irasima, forgetting all caution. Joaquim! A group of women spotted her first. She's back! Someone shouted. In seconds, Donna Antonia appeared, her face stained with soot. Thank the gods! The children urgently need you. What happened? Asked Irasima, as they ran to the improvised infirmary, now transferred to one of the more distant houses. Your father's men, replied the healer. They came earlier, said it was just a warning, that they would return tomorrow to finish the job. And Joaquim? The question came out as a desperate whisper. Antonia pointed to a mat in the corner of the infirmary. He tried to stop them, took a blow to the head. Irasima ran to him, falling to her knees at his side. Joaquim was pale, with an improvised bandage on his temple. He opened his eyes at her touch. You returned, he murmured. Did you manage to speak with the judge? Yes, she replied, holding his hand. He will come tomorrow, but now I need to care for you and the children. Around her, the sick little ones moaned, some delirious with fever. The treatment she had started had been interrupted by the attack. Help me get up, asked Joaquim. I can still be useful. Together, they organized the survivors. While some continued fighting spots of fire, others prepared improvised defenses for the night. Irasima resumed the treatment of the children, quickly teaching other women to apply the special compresses. 1 day until the ultimatum. The night passed in tense vigil. No one truly slept. At dawn, Irasima checked each child, relieved to find that the epidemic finally seemed to be subsiding. Most showed lower temperatures, the spots diminishing. Only then did she allow herself a moment of rest, sitting beside Joaquim at the entrance of the infirmary. What will we do if the judge doesn't arrive in time? He asked, observing the horizon where the rising sun painted the sky red, a sky of blood, as the ancients said. Irasima held the talisman he had given her. Then we'll fight with what we have. We won't surrender what we've built. It was Tiago who first heard. The boy had taken on the role of lookout, perched in a tree at the edge of the clearing. Horses! He shouted. Many horses coming! The entire community froze, preparing for the worst. Joaquim, supported by an improvised staff, positioned himself at the front of the group, Irasima at his side, with Tiago between them. The sound of hooves became louder until the first riders appeared on the main trail. At the front, mounted on his black horse, came Colonel Augusto Albuquerque. At his side, to everyone's surprise, rode Judge Antenor Queiroz. The silence that settled in the clearing seemed as dense as fog. Iracema felt her heart sink at seeing her father side by side with the judge. The group of riders stopped a few meters from the gathered community. Behind the colonel and the judge came at least 20 armed men, some with unlit torches that made their intention clear. Augusto Albuquerque dismounted with the studied elegance of the powerful. His cold eyes scanned the community until they fixed on Iracema. "I see my generous peace offering was not properly appreciated," he said in a loud, theatrical voice. "You still insist on occupying lands that don't belong to you." The colonel smiled with disdain. "The deadline ends today, but as I am a civilized man, I brought the illustrious Judge Queiroz to witness my final offer." The magistrate dismounted, his face unreadable. "I am here to ensure justice is done," he formally declared. It was then that Iracema stepped forward. "I am no longer your daughter," she said in a clear and strong voice. "Not since the day you delivered me as merchandise to solve your problems." She turned to the judge. "Your Honor, before you is a community that survives on its own merit, that cultivates these abandoned lands for generations, that cares for the rejected like me and this boy." She pointed to Tiago. "You also see the consequences of the attacks ordered by my father. Burned houses, destroyed plantations, injured people." "Enough theater," interrupted the colonel. "These lands belong to me by right and tradition." "What agreement would that be exactly?" asked the judge. "You showed me documents, but I would like to hear the terms from both parties." One of the elders stepped forward carrying an aged paper. "This is the original agreement signed 3 generations ago. It clearly establishes our rights to the lands up to the river." The judge examined the document. "This contradicts what was presented to me yesterday," he commented, looking at the colonel. The colonel made a dismissive gesture. "Old papers have no value when reality has changed." "The law doesn't work that way," the judge replied dryly. The colonel smiled, confident. "The law works as men decide it works, Your Honor. And in this region, men respect me." The judge was not intimidated. "Interesting perspective. But you know what else they respect in this region? Scandals. News about colonels who attack peaceful communities, who try to kill unarmed men, who abandon their own daughter." Augusto Albuquerque paled. "I received very interesting visits last night," continued the judge. "Merchants, small property owners, even a priest, all with stories about your tactics, Colonel." The colonel realized he was losing ground. "This is an absurd conspiracy," he growled. He gestured to his men who began to prepare to advance. That's when Tiago shouted, "He ordered them to shoot Joaquim. I saw. I was hidden in the bushes when his men shot." The boy was trembling but remained firm. "And now they want to drive us out because we know how to heal people." The judge looked severely at the colonel. "Attempted murder is a serious crime." He removed a paper from his pocket. "A judicial order issued last night. These lands are under the protection of justice until the question of ownership is definitively resolved." The colonel contorted in fury. "This is an outrage." He turned to his men. "Advance." But the henchman hesitated. The judge remained calm. "I strongly suggest you reconsider, Colonel. Your influence may be great, but there are limits." He pointed beyond the clearing where more riders were appearing. Merchants from the village, small property owners, even the priest from the neighboring parish. People whom Iracema had contacted, who now came in support of the community. The colonel realized he was cornered. He turned to Iracema. "You orchestrated all this." "My own daughter." Iracema held his gaze without faltering. "I learned from the best, Father. The difference is that I use it to protect, not to destroy." Augusto Albuquerque mounted his horse again. "This isn't over," he declared, looking at the judge. "I have friends in much higher positions than yours." "No doubt," replied the magistrate, "but I have mine too. And documents about your activities have already been sent to the capital." Finally, with an abrupt gesture, the colonel turned his horse. "Let's go," he ordered. The silence in the clearing remained, as if no one dared believe what had just happened. The judge finally spoke. "This will give you some time. It's not a permanent solution, but it's a beginning." By evening, when the visitors had already departed with the promise to return to continue the legal fight, the community gathered in the partially reconstructed yard. Donna Antonia lit the central fire. Today we honor our strength, declared the elder. We honor those who risked everything to protect us. And we honor the one who came as a stranger and became an essential part of us. The community formed a circle around the fire. Children recovered from the disease ran between adults, their laughter a testimony to the victory over multiple threats. Irakema observed the scene with a sense of belonging she had never known before. She felt a presence at her side and turned to find Joachim. You saved us, twice. First the children, then the land. She shook her head. We saved each other, that's what family does. The word hung between them, laden with meaning. Joachim looked at her face. That night, before you left to speak with the judge, we started something that was interrupted. When the moon reached the highest point in the sky, Joachim found Irakema again. Without words, he extended his hand. She accepted, allowing herself to be guided to the edge of the clearing. When they brought me here, began Irakema, I thought it was punishment. I never imagined I would find here what was always denied to me. Respect, purpose, acceptance, and you. He took her hands in his. When the council designated me to receive you, I expected a spoiled girl from the big house. Instead, I found a strong woman who just didn't know her own strength yet. He looked at her hands, now calloused from work. Hands that heal, eyes that see beyond appearances, a heart that knows no limits when it comes to protecting. Irakema felt tears forming. Here I learned that my body is not a source of shame, that someone's size is not measured by appearance but by actions. Joachim raised a hand to touch her face. You are beautiful. You always were. He hesitated as if gathering courage. Among our people there is a tradition. When a man finds the woman with whom he wishes to share his life, he must declare this before everyone. But first, he needs to be sure that she accepts him. And how does he discover this? Asked Irakema, her voice barely more than a whisper. By asking under the stars, when there is no one to hear, except the spirits of the ancestors. He held her hands more firmly. Irakema, healer of body and soul, she who came from another world to complete mine, would you agree to form a family with me? Not as a symbol of union between peoples, but as the choice of one who sees beyond appearances. Tears now flowed freely down her face. Yes, she answered simply. Yes, with all my heart. Years passed. Irakema and Joachim's house became the heart of the community. Tiago, now a strong young man, followed in the footsteps of his adoptive father as protector of the Quilombo, but had also inherited the gift of healing from the mother who had chosen him. The story of the white woman who came as punishment and stayed as a blessing was told on bonfire nights. On one such night, with the community gathered to celebrate another successful harvest, Irakema observed the mixed generations around the fire, the elders who had received her, the young people who had grown up under her care, the visitors who came to learn her healing techniques. Sitting between Joachim and Tiago, with her hands intertwined with theirs, she finally understood the complete meaning of belonging. It wasn't about appearance or origin. It was about finding your place in the world, about being valued for what you offered, not for what you seemed to be. It was about transforming rejection into strength, abandonment into purpose. As the flames danced, reflecting on the faces of those she loved, Irakema smiled. The rejected girl from the big house had found her home, not in the mansions of her ancestors, but in the simplicity of a people who saw beyond appearances. And in that simplicity she had become not only healed but a healer, not only welcomed but welcoming. If this narrative touched your heart, don't let it end here. Share your impressions in the comments, subscribe to the channel for more stories that transform pain into purpose and help spread these messages of acceptance and appreciation of diversity with a like. Just as Irakema found her place in the world, your words can make a difference in the life of someone who needs to hear that their value goes far beyond appearances.